Hello and a very warm welcome to another ZenootTV Weekly. Later on, we're going to be talking product design and innovation, specifically a company that is making components for the new Gordon Murray T50 supercar. First, though, as always, it's the news with Matt Chilton. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Nick. Great to be with you again.
Matt, it's obvious that the pandemic has not just forced a lot of companies to rethink their entire production output, but has given some companies, many companies, an opportunity to develop products to respond to the crisis and therefore help their businesses quite considerably. You've got news of two or three of them, I believe.
Yes, that's correct. And we've had a flurry of news stories around PPE production, growth, new job creation connected with it. The first, Ramfoam, has created just over 290 new jobs in the West Midlands. They will be producing PPE visors for the NHS. They've created 130 jobs themselves at their facility in Tividale and a further 164 jobs across their supply chain in the West Midlands. Of course, Ramfoam, well known for supplying foam products across a vast array of different manufacturing sectors, but again, another example of a business pivoting, changing, adapting to embrace PPE production. The second is Alpha Solway. They've secured a £53 million contract with NHS Scotland. They will be providing 232 million surgical masks and 2 million visors specifically for NHS Scotland. This will result in 200 new jobs being created at their Annan facility in Dumfriesshire. And the final is Hardshell, who are preparing to open a £1.5 million new facility in Cardiff. They'll be creating 40 new jobs and will be producing 300,000 respirators and 1.5 million masks a week once that facility is up and running and at full capacity. So we've got three examples there in just the space of a week of job creation, investment changing to meet the demand for PPE production for the UK coronavirus fight.
Matt, that's brilliant news from those three companies. Of course, so many other manufacturers around the country are contributing to help the NHS get through this pandemic fully kitted up. We're actually going to be meeting a company next week in Northern Ireland that makes safety equipment for the beauty salon industry, which was very severely damaged by the lockdown. Talking of lockdown, pets are said to have revelled in having their owners with them 24 hours a day. I'm not sure that's true of my cat, which seems to resent my very existence. But the fact is that the pet food industry seems to be on a bit of a roll at the moment. Tell us more.
Yes, that is correct. So, Mackle Pet Foods, based in Northern Ireland, in an effort to double its turnover, has announced a £5.7 million investment which will be creating just over 30 new jobs. Focus very much on expansion, focus very much on new equipment and investing in that site to grow both domestic and overseas markets as well.
They say you should never inquire too closely as to how sausages are made. I think that goes double for pet food. Matt, thanks very much indeed. See you next week.
Thanks, Nick. Looking forward to seeing you next week with more stories and more growth, investment and expansion from British manufacturers.
Absolutely. Well, coming up in just a moment, we are going to be talking to Rob Marchant of MarchantCain about what he and his company have done for the new Gordon Murray T50 supercar. Stay with us. Last week, you may remember that we covered in our news section with Matt the launch of Gordon Murray's 2.36 million T50 supercar. It is a quite extraordinary vehicle. It is innovative, engineering-wise, lightweighting, aerodynamically, in every which way. And I'm very pleased to say that my next guest has had a direct involvement in doing one of those really tricky bits of engineering that people don't often think about when it comes to how do you make a supercar operate. But I tell you, it's very, very important. His name's Rob Marchant of MarchantCain. Rob, a very warm welcome to you.
Hi Nick, how are you?
I'm just fine, thank you, if a little humid down here on the south coast. Tell me, Rob, how did you get involved in the T50 project? Why did Gordon Murray go to you, and what did you contribute to the car?
We've done a number of projects with Gordon Murray. They've always been an interesting company to work with and very innovative, and Gordon is obviously obsessed with weight and how things look. And they shouldn't be too gizmo-y, but they should be functionary, and if they're functionary, they should look beautiful. So that we like that philosophy as well very much. We started working on the T50 with our standard fare, which is moving glass. We then spoke to them about a number of other components which need to move in the car. So moving stuff is our way of working. We started working with them on the wiper system, which is very complicated, and also the active aero for the rear. Those are the three components we have on the vehicle.
You describe yourselves as thinking differently about engineering. Can you put a little bit of flesh on that? Because it's obvious if Gordon Murray is talking to you about what is possibly the most advanced car in the world, and you have clearly contributed a great deal to it, you do think differently about engineering. But tell me what that looks like.
One of the first things that we attempt to do with customers, and bearing in mind all of our customers are niche and difficult, not difficult customers, but difficult components and difficult cars. We ask all the questions about exploring the reason they're doing things. So that exploration of what do you want, how do you think it's going to perform, how can we help you make it perform or make it perform better, do you know what the performance criteria are? All of those things marry up to giving us a picture that we walk about in for quite a while, trying to understand what the customer wants. We then regurgitate it back to them in a way that is in an engineering form, which is both measurable and both hits our ability targets and their requirement targets. That's the first step. The second step about the thinking differently is not only around the engineering part, although it feeds directly to it, and that is around about how it commercializes. And the commercialization hits back at the engineering functions. And if we try and get early enough into the design, we can start influencing how their body works, and how the glass works, and certainly how the windscreen works. The windscreen wiper on this car it looks beautiful. It's an aerofoil shape, so that drag and noise reduction we're trying to achieve. But it's a pantograph. So we've got a single wiper doing a very broad windscreen, and we change the angle of the blade as it travels across the windscreen. Now, there's a lot of legalities about those. There's a lot of laws that we have to comply with, and the homologation of the car means that you have to prove that you can wipe these zones. Those are the thinking processes behind it are, we don't want nuts and bolts. So we think differently about it, but we have to have a starting point that's generated by commercialization and the exploring with the customer.
The T50 is by no means the first supercar niche product that you've worked on. Can you tell us about some of the others?
Porsche 918 Spider was quite a challenging car to work with Porsche on. There was a number of issues on that. Well, not issues again, is maybe the wrong word. A number of component parts that they wanted. And part of the design brief, the exploration point of that design brief, noise was mentioned but not necessarily quantified. And even if we did quantify it at that point, what we didn't know was the quality of the sound or what the sound needed to be. The first time we ran the system, we got the wrong noise. And nobody really knew what the right noise was. But it was definitely the wrong noise. So we had to go back through that, and we changed quite a number of components to get the noise to the right noise, which made quite a mechanical noise, which was great because it meant that something was happening on the front of the car which you couldn't see, but the customer realized something was happening. So that's one car. Other ones which we're still working with Rimac and others on these complex cars.
Talking of complex cars, you're now reaching into the world of the 3D printed car, and you're looking at creating the window actuators, printing window actuators for a printed car. That tells me that there's a kind of restlessness about you, that you're not just looking over the horizon, you're actually creating what's on the other side of it.
In a lot of ways, yes. The customer, which is Divergent 3D, and the car is the Seisinger C21, and they have a different thought on manufacturing and how they want to manufacture the car, and we've pushed those boundaries. The window regulator on that, the mechanism to move the glass. The glass is 1.5 meters long. It's a really complicated movement. We did the sealing system for the car as well. The car is 3D printed. It's a nodal parts. Its suspension systems are all 3D printed. It develops a different manufacturing method, and that's what they are all about. And a very interesting company in California. We're very proud of what we did with that company. We do look over the horizon, as you put it. We do look at how we can do things in a different way, but we also look at how the mechanisms can work.
Rob, the last place you worked at before starting MarchantCain, I think it was about 14 years ago now, with your wife Pam Cain, was Bentley. Since then, you've been ploughing this very distinctive furrow. What is it about yourselves that perhaps other manufacturers can learn from? Because, as I say, there is something deeply distinctive about what you do and how you do it.
I think one of the things we've learned, and I've been discussing recently, is not saying no, and not saying maybe, but saying yes. And I think that's probably one of the more uplifting things that these companies want. It's a restlessness of inquisitiveness, intrigue, wanting to help people, help customers to achieve what they want to achieve. So we try to accommodate everything. Why do they want to do it? How do they want to do it? How do they want it to look like? And sometimes in that case, it's what we term as a fog project. So the customer doesn't quite know what they want. They've got a sort of an idea, but it may be in layman's terms rather than in engineering terms. We don't necessarily know how to do it, but we've got a process that enables us to talk to the customer, to explore what they want, and convert that exploration into a next stage, which is defining it, writing it down, being clear on what they are going to get at the end of the project. So we're trying to predict maybe 2 or 3 years out what they're going to achieve, and that walk will change along the way. But we use a series of documents to control how that happens. And that document's open to the customer. So that dialogue is continuous. It's not, here's a specification, go away and make me that component. We don't entertain ourselves in that. Or here's a component, please make it for us. We don't do that sort of thing. We do the unusual. We do make the parts directly for the customer because it's important to them to get what they need rather than what they can buy off the shelf.
And it all starts with saying yes.
It all starts with saying yes.
Well, Rob, thank you very much indeed. And many congratulations on the Gordon Murray project. And that is absolutely world-beating. But I know it's just part of your journey. Good luck with the rest of it.
Thank you very much, Nick. Take care of yourself.
Rob Marchant, and what an extraordinary company and what an extraordinary history they've had, and perhaps an extraordinary future too, if Rob and Pam have got anything to do with it. Coming up in a moment, we're going to be discussing design and how it applies to what MarchantCain do, and how it may well apply to you. Stay with us. MarchantCain is clearly an exceptional company. Not everybody can be a MarchantCain. There's just not enough room. But some of the things that they do and the way they do them can surely hold lessons for other manufacturers. So let's find out a bit more with a man I've known for a long time, Dr. Paul Stead, who has spent his entire career in the field of product design and innovation. He's also, as it happens, been working with MarchantCain itself, so he has something of an inside track on this. Paul, a very warm welcome to you. I know that you're on holiday in Corfu. Thank you very much indeed for taking time out to talk with us today.
Pleased to be here, Nick.
Now, Paul, you've spent some time with MarchantCain. What is it about them that creates such fertile ground for product design and development?
A lot of this is about leadership, and I think if you've met Rob and Pam and the team several times now, I believe, or many times, and really it's top down. The way they've structured the whole of their company is about innovation, and you've got to remember their company has been built on solving complex problems for amazing clients, and they've become very skilled at being able to challenge themselves in that area as well. So in a way, they are what they eat. They are working with world-class clients, solving world-class problems, and they have become very world-class at this. The other thing you've got to remember, which makes this so much easier, is that it's a private company, and Rob and Pam are the majority owners. So they've built themselves a reasonably strong balance sheet, and they can, as entrepreneurs, can take the risk. So in the past, when I've been working with larger companies like John Deere or Procter & Gamble or Kellogg's, they very much had to institutionalize it, just as Rob has done, and bring their shareholders along with them. So what Rob's done is led from the front and really built a business on solving problems. And I think that's the essence. They actually, their DNA is all about loving engineering. They love, they've done the mask, they've done wipers, they've done windows. One of the things they said to me was they love choreographing engineering. So if you think of all the moving parts and the complexity that they deal with, they've got a real passion for that in their business. So for them, it's an easy step forward to constantly look at doing new. And I think that's what excites me about working with Rob and the team at MarchantCain is they're always looking at new ways to solve problems.
Yeah, you mentioned the mask just there. I should explain to our viewers, because I didn't discuss it with Rob in the interview. Even though their business didn't miss a step because of the pandemic, he still couldn't help himself. He still had to create a new kind of PPE mask, go into production and make a success of it. If a manufacturer watching this says to themselves, I want to be more like MarchantCain, is there anything they can do to become more like MarchantCain? Or is it one of those things that you say you've either got it or you haven't?
As I've just mentioned, that Rob and Pam and the senior management team, they're really entrepreneurs at heart. And I think one of the things that they're constantly working with world-class clients to solve world-class problems. A lot of manufacturers that we've worked with in the past have, they've got what I would call a balanced portfolio. They have a series of products in their portfolio that they are, and you can call them cash cows, you can call them stable products. They have products that they constantly sell, but they also have products under development and a pipeline of products constantly ready for market, and working with their customers and working with their customers' customers, developing the next pipeline of product. And I think that's one of the things that I would urge manufacturers to do is create pipelines of products to take their current product and adapt it, whether it's into new markets or to look for always be looking for new opportunities. There's a saying, if you're green, you're growing, and you're ripe, you go rotten. And I think the constant thing is to look at the product portfolio, constantly try to refresh that, work with your customers, constantly trying to energize them into making sure your portfolio is correct. Now, clearly in the automotive industry, if you're in parts manufacture, that becomes quite difficult because you're constantly making the same part probably for the same model. But I would also argue that what MarchantCain have done is they're always working on the next model. They're working on a pipeline of engineering products that's coming through. I know you've seen with the Gordon Murray car that's now come out, and they've been working with Aston Martin and other clients like that. There's a pipeline of products that's constantly being developed, and working with those clients will help you become better at what you become. So I think in a way it's a little bit of top-down leadership and vision of where the company is going, and being very close to your clients, and always being on the lookout for new opportunities as well, taking that very much green field approach and constantly balancing your current portfolio with a little bit of risk in there as well, because innovation isn't without its risks.
You've hit upon something there. I mean, I asked, can we be more like MarchantCain? Well, of course, MarchantCain's entire business is built around, as you say, helping companies solve problems. Not everybody can be in that field, but I understand what you're saying. You can, at least, if you've got a sort of bread and butter lineup, you should still have some jam in the pipeline that you're working on to at least give you that extra bit of innovation and advancement. Because if you're not advancing and you're just standing still, well, you ain't going anywhere.
Products have life cycles. They have, if you look at a product curve, there's the early adopter, there's the late majority. There's a, people can look at that. They know that all products have got life cycles. And it's knowing where you are in the life cycle of your product within your customer. Because if your customer's product is tailing off, your product is also going to tail off. So you want to be constantly out there looking to keep your product portfolio refreshed and relevant. So the thing that by necessity, MarchantCain are more of a consultant. They're constantly not only designing and developing, but producing their clients' products. So they're constantly on this development cycle. Many customers, and I've looked at before, have not got that R&D function inside. They're often told what to make. So I think, it's becoming masters of your own destiny. That's what MarchantCain are.
I just want to pick up a bit on the idea of innovation, because I've always regarded it, discussed it as a sort of thing in its own right, alongside workforce and skills, alongside technology, alongside customer service. But I've come around to believe, and I want to test this with you, that actually, if you're going to be successful, innovation and innovative thinking has to be present in every single discipline of your business. You can't just say, well, today is innovation day and the rest I'm just going to be doing what I've always done. Innovation has to be at the core of success.
I mean, that's been my life for the last 30 years. And I think I see it like a stick of rock. It's the letters that go through it. It's part of everything. And, I've been very lucky to work with some amazing clients, and it is in their business. It's in their DNA. It's in their brand. They build their business based on innovative thinking. And that's what stands out about the leaders that I've been lucky enough to work with. Innovation isn't something that they start one day and stop the next. It's day in, day out. And I mean, again, I've been very, very fortunate to go around many manufacturers in the UK, and there are car plants that are, the workers on the shop floor are involved in innovative thinking about assembly. So I don't see it as something that's lacking. It's something that is in a wide range of companies. Sometimes it's not called innovation. It's just the way of constantly becoming better at what you do.
Final thought. I mentioned earlier that Rob Marchant had designed this mask in response to the pandemic crisis and turned it into a product in a very short design through to production timescale. That story has been replicated across the sector. So many other companies have done that. And of course, at the very high level, we had the Ventilator Challenge UK, where a 4-month sort of drawing board through to production cycle was achieved remotely. So it's like the pandemic has wiped out all those old assumptions we had, that everybody had, that design through to production should take, I don't know, a year or so, maybe 18 months, and everybody works at that pace. Now, all bets are off. Now, do you think this is a good thing? I mean, is that a good way for us to go forward? Or should we be cautious about the fact that this extraordinarily difficult and high pressure event has led to these very short product cycle or design cycle timescales?
What's happened with the pandemic, and this is testimony to it, I think this video interview, is that people have become a lot more nimble at working remotely and working with teams remotely. I think one of the things we can't forget, and I think the Russians have grabbed headlines recently with the vaccine they've done in 2 months without, and the professors and doctors and the medical profession over here is saying it hasn't been tested well enough to know if it's right or wrong. I think the R&D cycle can be accelerated, but some things have to be tested. You see IKEA adverts where they're opening and closing kitchen drawers multiple times. Well, those things have to be done. They take time, and I think you can't rush some of those things. So whilst the cycle still goes on, and it can be accelerated with technology and team working and remote sharing, there's a physicality to it that sometimes needs testing. And unfortunately, accelerated live testing, whether it's putting components in deep freezers or under the ocean or doing whatever you have to do to test them, still needs to be done. In a way, that's why the UK government has actually bet on, is it 4 or 5 different vaccines from different houses, because they don't know what they don't know at the moment. And I do believe that sometimes you still need to do that real solid testing, and whether that's engineering or that's medical. The ventilator challenge you talked about, it was really more about assembly of proven parts, and those are the items that really got to market quickly, and the respirators the same. So I think, yes, the life is not going to be the same after this. That technology and remote working and remote sharing of files and numerous things like that is going to accelerate the development process. But let's not forget that products need to be fit for purpose. They need to be tested, and no one will thank us in the future if we rush at this and the Russian vaccine doesn't work, or the windscreen wipers don't work, or the door mechanism doesn't work, or the respirator doesn't work. So the thing that's, I still urge the robustness of testing that is required to meet the relevant standards that any industry adopts. So that bit can't be rushed. And unfortunately, for better or for worse, I'm not sure how we get around that. There's also some simulation stuff, but physically, things unfortunately need to be validated.
Well, I think then that let's take away from this that we've proved how brilliantly we can all work together, even though we've been atomized in teams have been atomized, workforces have been atomized, spread to the 4 corners of the country, and yet we can still come together and do some magnificent things. But perhaps that word of caution is absolutely right. Take your time over getting it right for the long term and for the customer. Paul, I just want to thank you very much indeed for taking time out of your holiday to be with us today. Thank you so much, and just enjoy the rest of the time in Corfu.
A pleasure, Nick. Thank you again for asking me.
Paul Stead there. Right, that's it for this edition of ZenootTV Weekly. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. Thank you to Paul Stead, thank you to Rob Marchant, and of course Matt Chilton with the news. I'll see you next week. Goodbye for now.